In just a few races, Charles Leclerc built up a massive lead over defending champion Max Verstappen. In fact, after the Australian Grand Prix, Verstappen wasn't even in second place. It was George Russell of Mercedes. Red Bull have had their problems, but the real problem is that Max has already given up. What is it that has the Dutchman feeling so defeated, and could he possibly bounce back? Stay tuned to find out. Everything that could go wrong. Red Bull experienced the highest of highs last season when they clinched the World Championship in the final lap of the final race. It may have been in controversial circumstances, but that didn't affect the celebration. And after a long winter of development and testing, the team were ready to defend the World Championship against whichever team popped up as their main rival. Throughout preseason testing, it became clear that Mercedes were having serious issues. Who would replace them at the top of the table? Ferrari. We haven't seen a Red Bull versus Ferrari fight since the days of Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. It promised to be a cracker, and Verstappen lined up beside Charles Leclerc to get the season underway. But things went from bad to worse on the third to the last lap when Verstappen suffered an engine issue. He managed to limp back to the pits to retire, but his teammate Sergio Perez wasn't so lucky. His car conked out on the final lap, and he watched a podium place slip away. So Red Bull had 0 points after the first race, but they did bounce back for round 2. Verstappen beat Leclerc to the line in a tense battle for first place, while his teammate was in 4th place. But just when it was picking up for the world champions, Max Verstappen's car had another issue at the Australian Grand Prix and was forced to retire again. As former Red Bull driver Mark Webber said, the team can't afford to be throwing points down the drain like they have done early in the season. Red Bull powertrains. Easier said than done. Red Bull have had a lot of ex-partners for engine suppliers, and they've all ended in pretty messy breakups. The first couple of years were like Red Bull's college years. They experimented a little, but didn't want to commit. They tried out Cosworth and Ferrari, but neither seemed like a good fit for them. Then they were ready to settle down and get serious. They started a partnership with Renault in 2007 and had the most successful years in their history. 4 world championships later, and things started to get stale. Mercedes were dominating from 2014 onwards, and Red Bull were looking for answers. By 2016, Red Bull and Renault were an old married couple. They both blamed each other for all the results and eventually decided to go their separate ways. Well, kind of. Their engine was still supplied by Renault, but the name used was their sponsor Tag Heuer. After 2 more seasons, things were getting better, and it was time for a real divorce. They announced an exciting new partnership with Honda, who had been powering McLaren and Toro Rosso cars for the past few years. Red Bull had seen the data, and they were convinced. From there, Red Bull created their own company, Red Bull Powertrains, to take over the manufacturing that Honda were doing. By the beginning of 2022, they were officially flying solo. So, the responsibility for all the early troubles falls totally on themselves. Hopefully, Red Bull are just ironing out the kinks, but if they don't pick up the reliability soon, Verstappen might be rethinking his future. After years of complaining about their ex-partners, single life is not feeling that great. How could Max get out of this contract with Red Bull? And why might he be lucky that he's had engine trouble so early in the season? Don't go anywhere, because all of that is coming right up. Throwing in the towel? After his car rolled to a stop by the side of the road in Australia, Verstappen said that he didn't even want to think about the championship fight. He said that if Red Bull wanted to fight for the championship, then these kinds of things cannot happen. This is not the kind of thing we're used to hearing from a defending world champion, especially just 3 races into the campaign. This year is the longest season in F1 history with a total of 23 races. But something has rattled Max since the first race. Last year was undoubtedly one of the best seasons in Formula 1 history. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton went into the last race totally equal on points. It was going to be a fight to the death, and over 100 million people tuned in to see the conclusion. The race certainly delivered for the fans. Verstappen passed Hamilton on the final lap to win the trophy. But unfortunately, Max's first world championship was dominated by news about the unusual interference of the race director Michael Massey. A few months later, Massey was removed, and an FIA report confirmed that the outcome had been determined by human error. Max has said on several occasions that he feels that he deserves the world championship because of his performance over the season. He also said that the losing side will always complain, but he keeps getting asked about the controversy. It's hard to imagine that it hasn't had any impact on him at all. He may have been hoping that winning this year's season would settle the debate once and for all, but as it slips further and further away, he's looking more and more defeated. Charles is miles ahead. For the moment, the reason for Verstappen's results is clear. His car is having issues. That's a job for the mechanics and engineers. There's not much for Max to do but to wait for a more reliable Red Bull. What's more worrying for him is that in both of the races where he retired, he was losing the head-to-head battle with Leclerc. At the first round in Bahrain, Leclerc figured out where Max was overtaking him and quickly adjusted. Verstappen was burning through his tires trying to overtake Leclerc, but nothing seemed to work. Then, after pitting, he was still behind the Ferrari and clearly frustrated. If it wasn't for the engine failure, Leclerc would have probably beaten him anyway. In the next round, Max was able to edge out his rival in Saudi Arabia. The constant complaining over the radio was a little worrying for Red Bull fans. He certainly didn't seem cool, calm, and collected. He was anticipating Leclerc catching up with him and sounded like the pressure was getting to him. 2 weeks later, and halfway across the world, F1 arrived in Australia. Max wanted to continue his effort of catching up to Charles, but the #1 Ferrari put in a lightning-fast lap and led the whole race. Some projections showed that even if Max hadn't retired, he would have finished more than 30 seconds behind Charles. That's how fast the Ferrari was. If your name is Ben Hodgkinson, you might be sweating. He's an ex-Mercedes engine specialist joining Red Bull powertrains this year. Then again, maybe he's the answer to their prayers. But for Max, he would have been beaten on the track anyway. At least he can blame the engine mechanics instead of himself. Escaping the bull. In March of this year, Max signed a huge $300 million contract with Red Bull. The team were so happy with his performance in 2021 that they gave him a handsome reward. His salary is now level with Lewis Hamilton's at around $55 million a season. The contract also locks him in for 5 years, which would make Max over 30 when it runs out. But Max must have some pretty good lawyers because he managed to negotiate an escape clause into the contract that he could choose to activate. Team advisor Helmut Marko has said that if Red Bull have a crash like they did in 2014, where it's hard for them to compete for world championships, then Max might be free to leave. The details of the contract haven't been publicly disclosed, but it's likely that if the engine issues continue over the season, Max will have a way out. Then it's smooth sailing for him, right? Well, it's one thing to get out, and it's another thing to find somewhere to go. Ferrari has Charles Leclerc, Mercedes has George Russell, and McLaren has Lando Norris. All of the big teams seem to be investing in young superstar drivers, so there might not be anywhere for Max to move. If that's the case, it might be better for him to take the juicy paycheck and live out his last days as a Red Bull driver. The way Max's attitude seems to be at the moment, he might not have it in him to fight for another world championship. After Nico Rosberg retired, he told the media how competing with Hamilton over an entire season was mentally exhausting. After fighting an uphill battle for so long, maybe Max is tired. Do you think Max has given up? And do you think he still has a chance to win the world championship? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.